I would like to invite you to join us for our ICF virtual conference called The Voyage Continues, July 23 through 25 later this summer, beginning at 6 p.m. London time each day. Friday will be devoted to our commemoration of the voyage of the Mayflower 400 years ago. Saturday will be devoted to other Mayflower stories. How did Congregationalism come to the various parts of the world outside of Britain and the United States? Sunday will be devoted to COVID stories from our churches around the world and a collective worship service reaching all the way around the globe. I hope you will be able to join us. To register for this free conference, please go to www.theicf.org. Before I leave you, I would like to ask for prayers for our brother in Christ, the Reverend Elvis Sado, who runs a very important mission and ministry in Myanmar. Please pray for him, his ministry, and all the people of this very troubled nation.
So the ICF conference is close to a month away, and you can register at the website internationalcongregationalfellowship.org. In the latest of our series of interviews in the run-up to the conference, where we've been attempting to show the breadth of experiences in geographical regions the ICF covers, I'm here with Bruce Theron, Minister at Ebenezer Congregational Church, which is part of the United Congregational Church of Southern Africa, and previous ICF moderator. So hi Bruce, thanks for joining us and taking the time out.
Thanks for the welcome, Joe.
So I thought we'd begin with our previous conference, actually, the last conference where we were able to gather in person before COVID radically changed that, which was in Stellenbosch, beautiful place in the world, in South Africa. And it was my first conference going as an attendee, so I remember it quite well. And the conference had a great mix of speakers and attempted to give us lots of context of South African history, which is, incredibly complex, as I'm sure you'll show and tell us, and as much context about South African Christianity as well. And we visited a slave church and Robben Island, which still retain a very raw reminder of that oppression. And I just wanted to ask, what did you take away from organising that conference, and how did you approach organising it as well?
Thanks, Joe. May I also just mention that slave church that you referred to?
Yes, yeah.
Currently is under shutdown due to COVID. The minister is in ICU as we speak. They've had quite a few funerals, COVID-related funerals, number of members, and Peniel being a very small community, the church being the center, they took the decision to shut indefinitely. As you may or may not know, we are just about into the third wave. Stellenbosch was a good venue for the conference. It's a student village, really, probably like many others. I haven't been to Oxford and Cambridge, but I can picture them also being student villages. And so with the academic year being in recess, the availability of the different reses helped to that extent, as well as the staff available volunteering of their services for the planning thereof. What do I take away from this conference? Just that it's a joint activity. Even though one person may stand and welcome and be the face of the assembly or of the conference, there were many people that worked behind the scenes. I think what I also took away from that was the affirmation. Now I'll probably come back to this later, but in apartheid years, Britain and America played a very big role in attempting to dismantle apartheid. So it was really meaningful to have those partners come back and to affirm the church, to affirm the country, and also just the thought that our ministry is not in isolation. We keep on mentioning we are part of a bigger family, and conferences like that cements that whole idea of family and fellowship, as you earlier referred to.
And I wondered if you could just give a bit of a background to your role during those times and during those troubles with apartheid. And it's a, you know, really broad question that we might not be able to cover in full, but how South Africa is living out its legacies as well.
I was fortunate enough to study at the Federal Theological Seminary, which even in apartheid times was the one institution that the government could not or did not touch because of the international support. The registrar at the time, and I'm trying to think of his name, was an English gentleman. He was during that time banned from the country. The seminary started off in Fort Hare, and then relocated to Umtata, and then relocated to Mbali, which all of them are black areas where the government granted us a 99-year lease. It's federal in the sense that Methodist, Anglican, Presbyterian, and Congregational clergy, students studied there, and people of all races and cultures from Namibia, and it really was a melting pot of cultures. Also a thorn in the flesh of the government at the time. The seminary was constantly being harassed by the security police, and many of the students before, in fact, I remember one Presbyterian minister literally coming out of Robben Island after 15 years, and a year later was at the seminary studying to become a minister in the Presbyterian church. I think for many students, if not all, it really was a political awakening. We were aware of apartheid, we were aware of the restriction on movement and areas and places where certain people of certain races could stay. But to live together, eat together, study together for 4 years has really worked well. The seminary was shut down, forcibly shut down for a limited period. The idea was for the seminary to disband, and about 40% of the student population were taken into custody for questioning. They really were convinced that it's a communist melting pot, and all the subversive things were happening there. So nothing really came of that. Many of our professors at the time studied abroad. They studied in America. They studied in England as well. So there's always been a very, very great support from the international community and the international world, really. So in as much as there was an onslaught from inside, I think the same was from outside by way of disinvestment and the like. Yep.
Yeah, no, that's really, really interesting. And yeah, the last question is about the COVID situation at the moment. So we're perhaps ending on a less bright note, but it's certainly a challenge that, you know, we're all facing and we will overcome. And South Africa's clearly been hit hard by COVID, with the rise of variants. I think is what we mainly see in our media, especially in Western Europe and in the US, and vaccine hoarding, which, you know, my native UK is certainly a contributor to. And I wondered if you could just give us a sense of what's happening on the ground with restrictions and potential routes out and difficulties as well.
Yeah, thank you. It's really uncharted territory. We are currently entering our third wave in the Western Cape. We are not quite there in Johannesburg, Gauteng, Johannesburg region where most of the delegates would have landed coming into the country. They are really stretched very, very thin. Lack of oxygen, availability of beds, availability of beds in ICU. So they encourage people not to come to hospital unless it's really, really needed. We had lockdown 5, stage 5, towards the end of last year, and there is a strong suspicion that either either stage 4 or 5 will be announced this weekend. So there's a curfew from 10 o'clock till 4 o'clock in the morning, no movement. Alcohol available from Monday to Thursday, which in a way is a good thing. My daughter is doctor at trauma at the local, the very big teaching hospital, and over weekends you've got people that have been knifed and that have been shot. And the last 2 weeks since we're in lockdown 3 with no alcohol available over weekends, she said they are extremely quiet.
Oh, wow.
So that continues to be a problem in South Africa. The vaccinations are not going as it should, despite all of the promises. We initially were given AstraZeneca, but then it was felt it's too close to the sell by date or use by date, and it was given back or passed on. And then there was a whole lot of political wrangle whether we're going to get Johnson & Johnson or the, what is the other more common known, Pfizer. So Johnson & Johnson was the first, given to the frontline workers in the medical field. They were the first that got it. We were, from the clergy side, we were invited, or faith leaders were invited for the jab. You know, the former Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Now, they describe us as being influencers. So I was part of that initial group that was with Archbishop Desmond Tutu, retired emeritus Archbishop Desmond Tutu, with cameras and television cameras and news people as well, to capture this. So with great fanfare, we were only about 50 for that first day, but they tried to get enough mileage out of that to get people to go. After that, it was the 60 plus, 60, if you're 16 older, you register, and then you're given a date. It didn't work that well. Even though you registered, people were desperate and did a lot of walk-ins. I think if we were not given that opportunity, we would not have been vaccinated yet. As from yesterday, all teachers, all educators are due to be vaccinated. Our schools are tough times. Our private and Model C schools, formerly white schools, have an average 30 students, 30 learners, whereas your traditionally colored and black schools have up to 40, 50 people. So social distancing just doesn't work there.
Yeah.
The teachers have complained and said about that more than enough. The one thing that's facing us is COVID, just being tired and weary, COVID fatigue. So
Yes.
masks are not fully worn. It covers the mouth, not the nose. Social distancing is not adhered to. We are encouraging churches to close down. That's difficult. Churches have been suffering financially because of lockdown and numbers. It's at this stage, the maximum you can allow into a worship sanctuary is 50. It was 100 up to 2 weeks ago. It's 50, and a ban may be placed on all gatherings, including weddings and funerals, absolute to the minimum, but worship as well. So it's difficult in these trying times, and as you would know, we don't know where it's going to end and what is in store for us. But that really is a global pandemic.
Yes, I think that's the thing, isn't it, that we had when the pandemic first reached the UK and Western Europe and the US. There was talk from media that it would be this great equalizer, that it was facing all of us at the same, pace and with the same velocity, and it clearly isn't the case. It's widening social inequality and like you talk about education and everything else. It's it's really quite tough for a lot of people, and our thoughts will go out to to you, Bruce, and everyone in South Africa who's facing it there as well.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you for joining me, and we hope that you can attend the online conference as well.
Thank you. That's the online is the new normal.
I think so.
Thank you so much. Every blessing. Go well. Thanks, Joseph.